Chapter 3: Anarchy. Anarchy is a world without authority. From Greek anarchon, no rulers, just as monarchy from monoarchon means one ruler. Anarchy does not mean no rules, it means no rulers. The idea of rulers implies that of authority, governments. The idea of rules implies that of morality, ownership, principle, or law. If one were to inquire upon a world of law without government, or morality without legality, rules without rulers, the source of rules must not be man, even if it is man who applies them. If legality was morality, then it would simply be morality. If law or government was natural law, then it would simply be nature. If rulers were rules, then they would not be rulers. However, the rulers proclaim that they are the source of rules, as if you need rulers for rules, as if morality needs legality. This assumes that rulers are natural. However, as by studying the nature of government and authority previously, we see they cannot and must not be. The attempt for the rulers to be the rules, is the very problem, as it is for the unnatural to be natural. It is evident within nature that there are rules to our existence, even for mere social order or among people's businesses and property. These rules are timeless and universal, discovered among learning from our nature. For instance, knowing that you own yourself and that others cannot own you is a rule that you acquired by the nature of beings. It didn't take a ruler to tell you that you own yourself, for even if they did, they cannot change nature, the inherent rules, order, or constitution of life. The laws of inertia, thermodynamics, cause and effect cannot be changed. These are considered natural laws, which must be followed. The word law even means an existing condition which is binding and immutable, meaning it cannot be changed. In light of this definition, man-made law is merely an illusion of natural law, an opinion at best. When we learn of these laws, we follow them more, otherwise we may get hurt or cause unexpected or unintended reactions. For instance, one can jump off a cliff and assume no consequence, but the laws of nature dictate what will occur, whether humans like it or not. When natural laws also spoken of, or in the lens of principle, such as that of the non-aggression principle or voluntarism, it may relate to how humans engage in social behavior or property rights. Most people know that it is wrong to violate others. This is a rule they live with because if they did not, they would not maintain good relationships with others and society would condemn them. If an individual owns their shoe because they worked for it and paid for it, or they have their own business, they maintain ownership over their property by ensuring that they have control over it, meaning that they maintain rules. They are not imposing rules for others' property, only for their own property. If they want to have rules with others for the same property, they work with them but not making them follow their rules by the threat of violence. They are voluntary. Most people will settle situations without violence as a prerogative, as it would be most productive for the mere rule of living life naturally. It has been similarly said as the golden rule, karma, moral law, law of attraction, do no harm, the Tao, virtue, universally preferable behavior, and the list goes on. These would all have no value if legality was the sole arbiter of morality. The whole existence of these is based on knowledge and experience over time, for which time tells all truth in nature. Although karma may not always work spontaneously, or people may not always be able to defend one another on the spot, with morality upheld, the laws or principles of nature will be embraced in the aggregate. If there is a dispute between two peoples, they may have a third party help settle it between them, but that third party isn't the sole judge for everyone. This also creates a market incentive for more people to judge fairly and offer help. It may be said that nobody is above the natural law. No one person gets to decide how everything works for everyone else, as one should always strive to determine what is right. If it's right one day and wrong the next, then find what is right in the next. If it's right for one person but wrong for another, then find what is right for another. This is time and place, a world of nature always awaiting our rightful embrace, so that we may live on in order and harmony with it. These are taught as rules by others, not something that is created into the world by any government or ruler. The only exception to this is when they are acting as an authority. People will believe it is right or necessary to violate others. Therefore, the exception to rules come as the consequence of rulers imposing their will or opinion as the rules, or as people believing in the whole notion of rulers, that of man-made authority. People can do wrong, but they will not be able to continue unless people allow their wrongdoing through the belief in authority. Even those who proclaim to be rulers are subject to the laws of nature or rules of the mass public. This all amounts to the fact that rules are superior to any idea of rulers, if people were to embrace them. There must be trust in the fact that people will eventually learn to know how to act, and therefore we must allow people to learn to know how to act, even sharing it with them in the form of moral suasion. When they cross the line, being that they harm or come to affect others, then peoples may be at the defense of the victim. If one wants to hire some private security, different organizations for different means will grow, but there will be no monopoly for one service, unlike the involuntary government services. It was no surprise when Lysander Spooner attempted to set up his own post office, he was shut down by the government so that they can have a monopoly on postage, although his competition lowered the prices overall. One can only imagine how many companies or businesses with good products did not survive through taxation, government demands, and monopolies, how much innovation the world could have had. In this light, rulers have kept hidden the rules that may help the world, and this would make sense if we consider the fact knowledge is power, whereas rulers are an unnatural power that requires violating individuals, keeping them in ignorance and fear of their true or better nature, so to keep them dependent on or enslaved by those imposing upon them. Rulers want to maintain an unnatural naturalization, to feed on the powerless while contributing to their ignorance of real powers, such as that of individual conscience and decision-making, to keep their own man-made power. Whereas rules of nature helps us to naturalize into the real world, helping all individuals understand their own real power. Yet, people will claim anarchy is utopian or impractical and not the real world. This is perfect for the unnatural. If everyone deserves freedom, everyone deserves knowledge. The rules shall be known by all who play the game of life, so that way no people are their pawns. For why rules are relevant to the idea of no rulers, it is because it is the requirement. Anarchy requires the self-control of individuals. Since it is in the nature of individuals to be in control of themselves, then nature equally requires the self-control of individuals. If an individual were to fear their freedom and be ignorant of its real requirements, they will never truly attain it. This would be the goal of those who want to remain as authority, to convince the masses of people that freedom is dangerous and therefore should not be embraced, that anarchy means chaos when it does not. However, such a deception would make sense from a system that seeks to replace nature or anarchy itself. In addition, if individuals never see true freedom as a possibility to be imagined, it will be difficult to ever create it. However, freedom does not need to be created. It needs to be allowed, because nature is the only need and allowance, and nature provides us all with freedom. We may have to play by the rules of nature, but so long as we do, we are considered free. Once we impose man-made involuntary rules or enslave one another, that is when we are no longer considered free. Freedom is the exact antithesis of slavery. To say you are enslaved to nature, it negates the idea of slavery. Just as it is to say nature is your government, it negates the idea of government. Since anarchy means no rulers, no government, and you really are born into the world of nature, of no title or imaginary lines or documentation, anarchy is nature. You may live in a world which does believe in using the man-made to attain freedom. However, the freedom it will achieve will not be anarchy. It will be a false form of freedom, making it as dangerous as lies mixed with truth to make the lie more appealing, the unnatural seemingly natural. Even if one used firearms for self-defense, it's not the firearm that creates the freedom. It's the education or rule behind it for why it is used by a natural human being in preventing violators of nature. The man-made can never truly fulfill the natural, no matter how much it attempts. Paperwork and man-made rituals concerning freedom is therefore meaningless, because freedom by definition means not being morally or naturally obligated to use any one thing for it. Freedom means infinite possibility, the ability to live your life as you wish so long as you do not cross others' freedoms. One can choose to be a pacifist or non-resistant, have no security. One can choose to have a commune where products are shared among people. One can choose everything for their own life because it's their own. People can freely choose who they want to associate with, but nobody is having to comply against their will. Otherwise, that would be government. That would assume rulers. Since it is in the nature of everybody to make their own decisions and associate, as it's their own body, their freedom is natural and they have no ruler but themselves. Anarchy is therefore freedom so much as it is nature. To fear it simply because it is told of us to fear it, when we practice it every day by voluntary interactions, except in the case of authority, it is mere ignorance. If attaining no rulers means you rule yourself, internal monarchy, that means you are free, external anarchy. If you've always ruled yourself and you simply gave way into the belief that you do not, then it's just the matter of unraveling all the veils of ignorance or deception, keeping you from your own freedom, ultimately your own self. Most people desire freedom. It is their source of fun, health, and happiness in all matters of life. If every individual is free from the chains of another, recognizing why and protecting why, as there would be with no rulers and only rules, then there becomes anarchy in the aggregate. The so-called state of nature is even said to be anarchy. Yet, nature is another word for constitution and order. Humans will start hurting each other just because there isn't a ruling class, writing something on a piece of paper miles and miles away, or a centralized monopoly on defense. To assume humans will do nothing about any problems is quite silly, especially as we can see how powerful technology has come to assist in the efforts of sharing knowledge, creating transparency, and holding people accountable. Indeed, we can use the man-made to prevent the unnatural, because the man-made is not inherently unnatural. We will always create and do things. We simply do not need to violate nature in order to do so. Those who justify authority or rulership justify endless violations against nature, as it represents the unnatural aggregate. The whole concept of authority proclaims to be nature itself, that man can do whatever with no repercussion. The idea of authority is virtually the same in that of the criminal or man with bad intent who thinks he can justify violating nature for his benefit or out of his own internal problems. Notice, the intent to do something wrong comes directly thereof the lack of rules, for this is where confusion, internal anarchy, leads an individual to carry out wrong acts. One may feel sympathy for this individual, as they may have had bad or unnatural experiences leading them to do bad or unnatural things in response. It won't seem bad to the person doing it, but because they know no better, that's why they do it. With moral suasion and learning the rules, individuals like this may be helped. However, if instead one insists that they follow the rulers, they will never learn what is actually right. They may even rebel further due to the pressures or further confusion. When we put ourselves in our old shoes, as well as other individuals, we see the shared sense of humanity and nature found within everyone. Seeking out the freedom that each individual desires and helping them achieve so as by rules, not rulers, will help the world tremendously. What makes anarchy helpful is not merely because it is natural, but because the possibility of chaos within is a teacher even without moral suasion. With authority, the chaos through violence and slavery is guaranteed, affecting large populations even seen as moral or natural or necessary. Whereas, if any chaos were to occur as mere possibility in nature in anarchy, there would not be mass bloodshed, wars, despite how conflicts may always persist, and the chaos would be seen as immoral or unnatural or unnecessary. Think of the scenario where everyone is doing their thing, minding their own business, but one person acts out of hand. They harm someone. Everyone will see the person doing the harm as wrong, having disturbed the natural flow of society and people socially coming together. People are obligated to be responsible and take care of that situation, so to help bring peace back, not wait around for some authority to take care of it for them, negating any natural need of responsibility. Now think of the same scenario, except people wait for an authority. Or better yet, perhaps the authority was the very one doing the harm. People would assume it is among the natural flow of society, since they trust the authority. The matter of trust is much so the matter of what people perceive to be natural, right, or moral. The truth is, nobody should trust an authority. People should trust morality, good actions, and good people, regardless of man-made illusory titles and positions, and therefore always do the right thing and at all times be ready to do the right thing. This is what anarchy not only obligates people to do, this is what is required to create anarchy. Rules enforces rules. Nature enforces nature. Humans enforces humans. All is where it should be in their natural time and place. Rulers are not the rules. Governments are not nature. Authority is not human. Reading The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke even mentions that there is no such thing as anarchy, and this would be true if we assume it is simply nature. The notion of government is illusory in usurping nature, but so is the word anarchy in describing nature, since if it is freedom, and that is everywhere, then equally so it becomes null and void, only to exist due to the lack thereof, just like the very notion of the natural. Upon optionally using the nature dynamic and learning the nature of anarchy based on our knowledge, the intended use or function, the simple or true nature, may be said as for living without rulers. The requirements or base nature are from freedom, no politics. That of what it is made, the core nature, is of the natural world. The impacts or effects, the second nature, can be the nature of voluntarism, tolerance, possibility, self-ownership. The type is general nature, a social system. The greater function or use, higher nature, is for a better place, a place without chaos. Together, for living without rulers, from freedom, no politics, of the natural world, can be the nature of voluntarism, tolerance, possibility, self-ownership, a system for a better place, a place without chaos. Now, upon this assessment, which you may very well expand upon, check for any contradictions or connections. What makes this different from our assessment on government is the fact anarchy can be strictly defined as no rulers, whereas government can be of many different forms, all pertaining to rulers. How could one describe all of what anarchy looks like if it has no particular form or politics? If it's of the natural world and doesn't really have a function, just a meaning, then it may seem redundant. It's for a world without chaos, the same as the function for government, yet so we assume. From the meaning or common interpretations of the word, there could be many assumptions, yet if we were to separately assess the word freedom and relate it to the Greek roots of anarchy, we'd likely see a connection that we cannot ignore. When nature is found, we know we are on the right track. If we assess that of which isn't of nature, of course we will have confusion and contradiction. Or, if we compare such to that of nature to assess, of course we will find redundancy or ourselves trying to find meaning of that which could be self-evident. Learning about anarchy is a good example of apophasis, learning what is from learning what is not. In the same way, we may understand what is right or natural from knowing what is wrong or unnatural. All the many scenarios imagined are covered in What Anarchy Isn't by Larkin Rose. Much like time, anarchy has not only proven itself through time with countless forms of governments rising and falling to the top source of unnatural death, it also heals all aggregate wounds over time when embraced. All the mass corruption, mass wars, mass crime, mass poverty will fade with time, as people come to their evolved state, their self-responsibility and self-ownership, their promotion of knowledge and consciousness, all the hidden truths and facts about our world coming to the surface after many years of suppression. Man will no longer place a box over nature in his attempts to be God or nature. Man will find his place for himself without imposing his will on others to dictate their place when it will ever be out of place, because it is not man's place to rule over another man. Anarchy has always existed beyond all political systems, therefore it is natural to exist. Being that it is already present at all times and will always show itself through the need of freedom, it is naturally occurring. Being that human beings naturally have the ability to rule themselves, and that prevents violations of nature or denaturing to begin with, it is natural to use, as it is to embrace. Being that anarchy is therefore natural, there is no need to identify ourselves to an identity or ism such as anarchist or anarchism, as it is to realize mere humanity, nature, and freedom. This would also include the colors and supposed factions, adding man-made illusions which may thwart an otherwise natural imperative with attachment away from our unique selves. We are all meant to live as we please. Nature wants us to live in anarchy in a voluntary world free from slavery and free, period. A quote from Leo Tolstoy: "Even if the absence of government really did mean anarchy in a negative, disorderly sense, which is far from being the case, even then no anarchical disorder could be worse than the position to which government has led humanity."